Today, we're going to be covering all the new enhancements for CrossLink 2022 desktop version. And when it comes to the new enhancements for this upcoming tax season, what we have to look forward to is increased security in the form of multi-factor authentication. We're going to take a bigger look at that here in a bit. We're also going to be reviewing the improved interview mode for those that like to prepare tax returns using the interview method as opposed to the forms method of tax preparation. We'll see the differences when it comes to this year and its interview mode. We also have a redesigned invoice, much asked for request from our customers. We've redesigned the invoice to make it simpler and easier to understand. We'll see that as well. We've improved the integration of our wallet. We know that now the wallet is a necessary part of setup. Adding funds to your wallet to cover those transmission costs is part of using the software. So with that in mind, we've also made improvements to the software to help you keep track of, how much is being deducted from your wallet, how much you have remaining from your wallet. Big improvements when it comes to that. And last but not least, we have PayJunction integration. When it comes to PayJunction, this is a brand new service that's available for desktop. That's pretty exciting. So we'll definitely be reviewing what that's all about and how you can use PayJunction for your tax business. But along with the new enhancements, we're also going to be reviewing any new and updated 1040 forms and also any business forms that have been updated for the tax season. We'll kind of go through all that during the later half of the presentation. So with that said, let's get right into the new enhancements for the year, starting with increased security in the form of multi-factor authentication. Now, this is due to the IRS. The IRS has mandated that all tax software must have multi-factor authentication. And by the way, when I say multi-factor authentication, what I'm talking about here is basically two things or two necessary items to get you logged into the software. It's not just one password anymore. It's your password with something else. And the way we've handled it to keep, in accordance with IRS regulations, is using a separate code that's created continuously. And the way it works is fairly simple, and you're going to be encountering this as soon as you log into the software for the new program. Right after you log into the program, you're going to encounter a screen or a window like we see on screen right now. This is going to pop up, and as you can see, it's selected by default. The check mark is selected automatically. So you can choose whether or not you want to opt in to this multi-factor authentication using this extra layer of security, or if you don't want to use it, you can deselect that checkbox. And speaking of selecting and deselecting checkboxes, this can also be done in the software. Whether or not you've enabled it or disabled it, you can reverse that by going to the Utilities menu. Once you're in the program, going into Utilities, and then selecting User Preferences, this window will appear. And notice that we have an MFA button towards the bottom there that you can use to either enable or disable this. Now, assuming that you do want to use multi-factor authentication, the way it works specifically is when you choose that you want to use that multi-factor authentication, a QR code image is going to appear on screen. That QR code image, you're going to be scanning that with an authenticator app, not with your camera, not with your phone's camera or, nothing like that. You need to use an authenticator app. And there's many of them out there. For example, I use Google Authenticator on my phone. But you scan that QR code image, that saves that information onto the authenticator app. And then now your authenticator app will always have that code that you'll be using to enter into the software, like a 6-digit code. So when you're logging in, the new process would look like you enter your username, your password, and then the program will expect this code, which you can get from the authenticator app. And again, there's lots of them. If you search your app store on your phone for authenticator app, you'll see lots of options: Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, et cetera, et cetera. So choose whichever one you prefer. And that way, They'll be able to protect the software. No one will be able to log into the program if they have your password, because they'll also need that code that you'll have on your phone. So that's a pretty big change coming up. I know it's maybe not the most convenient thing, but when it comes to security, we do have to keep information secure, especially when it comes to this important information, social security numbers, things like that. That's why the IRS has mandated this change. So if you're interested in doing that, feel free to do so. I use it in my software. Next up, we have an improved state support in the interview mode. Again, this is for those folks that like to use the interview method for tax preparation. So if you're preparing returns using this method, I'm happy to announce that now the state section has been expanded to kind of allow you to complete the tax return entirely if it includes a state return using the interview method. And then, so just long story short, it makes it easier to complete the entire tax return through this interview process without having to rely on the verification process to wrap up a few things here and there. And if you haven't used the interview method and you wanted to take a look, notice that up here on the toolbar of the software, we have this interview button that you can click on whatever point. So if you're not very familiar with this interview mode and you wanted to see what it's all about, when you're in the return, just click on interview. It'll guide you through essentially through the preparation of that tax return. Very useful if you have folks in your office that aren't very familiar with tax preparation, or don't have much experience preparing returns. It'll guide them through that process of preparing a tax return. And now with the expanded state section, it also guides them through the state process as well. So very exciting there. Next up, the invoice. So I know this is has been one that has been requested from our customers, a redesign of the invoice to make it easier to understand and easier to explain to taxpayers, to your customers. So we've done just that. We've broken down the invoice into 3 easy to understand sections. Fees related to tax preparation services is the first section of the invoice. Fees related to software and transmitting services, and then itemized billing charges. That's been there before, but it's now just organized in those 3 areas. And if you wanted an idea of what it looks like, here's the first one, the fees related to tax preparation services. So there it is right there on screen. In my case, I have the program charging per form. It comes out to $250 for this example. But if I had any other types of fees coming in, they would appear here. And then most importantly, I think, is this fees related to software and transmitting services. Very straightforward, showing you all the different types of fees that are associated with the software and transmitting this tax return. And you'll notice as well, next to each one of these areas, you have like these numbers with an asterisk. Well, those are basically footnotes, and right below this section for the fees related to software and transmitting services, you have this, which clearly explains what each fee is all about, hopefully making your life much more easier when it comes to, not only you understanding these fees, but also explaining these fees to the customer if it does require additional explanation. So very, very straightforward and lots of good information there. Improved wallet integration. This is another thing that we've improved, especially since the wallet is a required piece of setup. Now, when you're transmitting the tax return, it'll show you what exactly is going to be charged to your wallet, giving you an idea of how much is being deducted from your wallet funds. And also, the program will provide you with pop-up reminders if you're running low or if you don't have sufficient funds in your wallet. The program will remind you, to take a look and potentially add more, reload your balance inside the wallet. So, just making things easier to use since it is a requirement of setup now. And then last but not least, we have PayJunction. PayJunction integration. This is brand new for desktop for this upcoming tax season. And when it comes to PayJunction, I think it was important to answer two things. First of all, who is PayJunction and how does it integrate with CrossLink? PayJunction is essentially a credit card processing company, very similar to if you have experience with Square and things like that. If your office would like the ability to process credit cards and have like a terminal to process those credit cards, swipe the card or insert your card, now we have that available to you. And the good thing is that it integrates with the software, keeping track of payments and whether or not a customer has paid their balance through the software. And then also PayJunction has its own benefits when you log into their website and review their information. There's invoicing, recurring billing, reconciliation, things that you can do on their side to keep track of how your business is doing. But as far as setting up PayJunction to use with the software, it's a very simple process. First of all, you reach out to PayJunction, and you can go to our website there under the Program Enhance, I think it's called Program Features. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Program Innovations. If you go to our website, go up to CrossLink and then Program Innovations, you'll see our section on PayJunction with a link that'll take you right to their website where you could potentially get signed up, review those benefits, things like that. You could also just Google CrossLink PayJunction and it'll take you straight to their website. Once you do, you'll have a login and a password to PayJunction. And then once you have those two pieces of information, you can go to Setup and Office Setup, add those to your login, your PayJunction login, your PayJunction password, and that's it. You're integrated. The program will now be able to, detect whether or not a customer has paid through PayJunction and keep track of all that in the invoice as well. So very cool, especially if you want the opportunity to, to provide that to your customers. Personally, I tend to purchase things with credit card more than I do with cash or check, definitely. So going to a business that accepts credit cards is usually, that's important to me. So now, if you want to be able to serve your customers that way as well, we have that option available. So that's, I think, the most exciting stuff. Now we're going to get into maybe the more drier topic, all the new changes that have occurred when it comes to 1040 forms and worksheets, business forms. So bear with me as we go through with this here. We're going to see a few slides here with a lot of information. But, there are some pretty important changes that have occurred this year when it comes to tax law changes. And I should mention as well that if you're interested in a more detailed information about this piece, about all the new changes that occurred when it comes to tax law changes for this upcoming tax season, we do have the webinar archived that occurred earlier this week, the Tax Law Changes webinar. If you go to YouTube and go to our CrossLink Tax channel or on our website, you can find it there as well under training. You'll find the archived webinar that occurred, I believe, last Tuesday. That covers all the new tax law changes. And we also have another one coming up in January, an updated one. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in all this type of information. But new 1040 forms. We've got some new forms to talk about. First one is the 8911. This form is used to figure out any credit for alternative vehicle refueling property placed in service during the tax year. A new form. And then another new form is the 8990, used to figure out the amount of business interest expense a taxpayer can deduct and the amount to carry forward to the next year. So expect those new forms available. Now, as far as updated forms go, we have an updated income and details checklist. A small update, but now it prints and displays if the taxpayer received a tax advance. If they got that type of product, it would display that information. And then also some new changes to Schedules 1, 2, and 3. They've all just been expanded a bit more. They're now all three of them are now 2 pages as opposed to 1, since that's just been expanded upon. And as far as each one goes, Schedule 1, we've added some more data entry fields for other income and adjustments to income, so just more fields for that. Schedule 2, we've expanded the list for other taxes. And then Schedule 3, we've expanded the list for non-refundable credits in Part 1 and other payments, and refundable credits in Part 2, and have expanded the list of data entry fields. All right, so some slight changes there when it comes to all those schedules. Moving on, we have schedule seats that change on the 2106 and minister worksheet. Now meals can be 100% deductible in certain cases. And then the EFPMT form, or electronic funds payment form. This form has been expanded to display up to 4 EF payment submissions, and the submitted payment will be added to the electronic payment history once all of the following return types have been queued. And there we see the 4 types of, return submissions. We have the main return submission once it's initially sent, and then you have 3 1040X's, 3 corrections essentially. Next up, some changes to the 1099 miscellaneous. This form has been expanded and now includes a box 11 for fish bought at resale. So if you have any of those types of customers, we've added that. Money added to this box will be linked to the Schedule C. Some changes here when it comes to the EIC checklist, because this has changed. Age requirements to qualify for the EIC has been updated. The minimum age for taxpayers without qualifying children has been reduced from 25 to 19. 25 was the age last year. Now it's 19, except for certain full-time students. And the max age for taxpayers without qualifying children has been removed entirely. So big changes there. Also, 2441, some big changes here for tax year 2021. The Child and Dependent Care Credit has the following changes. First of all, it's fully refundable for those with a main home in the U.S. for more than half the year. And then the amounts have significantly changed. They've been increased, 8,000. The qualifying expenses have been increased to 8,000 for one qualifying child, with the max credit being 4,000. And then 16,000 for 2 or more children is the qualifying expenses, with the max credit being 8,000. The credit rate and income limits were increased as well. 50% of the expenses for taxpayers with AGI under 125K. And then the credit rate gradually declines to 0, when the AGI reaches 438. Once they're 438 or above, then no credit, or they don't have any credit rate. So big changes there for the 2441. The Schedule 8812 for tax year 2021, the additional child tax credit has the following changes. Take a look at this. It's fully refundable for those with the main home in the U.S. for more than half the year, just like the 2441. Children under the age of 18, including those aged 17, will now qualify. And the max credit has been increased as well, $3,600 per child under 6, and $3,000 per child aged 6 to 17. So very nice there. For 2021, there is no minimum there is no minimum amount of earned income required to qualify, and half of the credit was available as an advance payment. Schedule 8812 will reconcile the advance payment amount received with the credit taxpayers will qualify for in determining the credit for any repayment amounts for the year. So those are all the updated 1040 forms. Now let's take a look at some of the new business forms that we have, and some updated forms as well. Only 2 pages of this. So the K2, Schedule K2 is an extension. This applies to 1065s and 1120Ss, your partnerships and S-corps. The Schedule K2 is an extension of Schedule K. Schedule K2 is used to report any items of international tax relevance from the operation of a partnership or S-corp. K3 applies to the 1065 and 1120Ss. Schedule K3 is an extension of K1, and it's used to report to partners and shareholders their share of the items reported on Schedule K1. The 7203, I believe this is a new form. This was pulled from the S Corp basis worksheet. It was pulled out of the instructions and turned into its own form. So that's going to be available in our CrossLink business package, those preparing business or corporate returns. And then finally, one last page, the 8990. This form is used to calculate the amount of business interest expense that can be determined and the amount to carry forward to the next tax year, the 8990. And then the 8996, this form is used to certify that the corporation or partnership is a qualified opportunity fund, or QOF. It is also used to annually report whether the QOF has met the investment standard during its tax year. All right. So those are all the new forms to look forward to this upcoming tax season, and all the new enhancements as well for the software. Very excited to see some of these enhancements that just make the program easier to use, more straightforward, just improve the workflow as you use the program.